double sniff, like a, and then a long exhale. If you facilitate that yourself, it'll actually really help to calm the body. So you do that though when you cry, like, you know, you do that same thing. So you're almost like neglecting the medicine that your body needed to relax in that moment too. Hello everyone, welcome to the Movement and Performance Podcast, where it is my goal to help people get active, connect with their body, and perform better. Today I have with me Stephen Rivera, also known as the MindfulWizard, and we'll be talking all about mindfulness and mindfulness practices. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Super excited to have you on today. You know, there's nothing better than local gems. I've said it again and again, but you know, you're a local gem. I always feel like when someone says, "Oh, what are you? What's your background?" Right? I'm like, I'm a Brooklyn kid, and you know, yeah, I could say I'm Italian, but my ancestors are so far back, like I lose some of that culture. But I'm like, you're a Brooklyn kid too, you know, like, and it's like, this is my people right here. So, and then when you see someone who's, you know, identifies close to you and then doing cool stuff, I said, I got to have you on the podcast. You know, you got a book. Yeah, that inspired me because I want to write a book. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, he got a book already. So I got it. I've been reading through it, bunch of mindfulness practices in there. I thought it fit in well with what I talk about because, you know, we talk about movement in the episode and the body, but mindfulness is a big part of that. I categorize it as mindful movement, and like there's things you could do, whether it's Tai Chi, yoga, whatever. But I figured we'd dedicate this whole episode to just mindfulness and mindfulness practices because you have a lot of really cool ones in your book. So before we dive into some of the practices, what would you say mindfulness is? How would you define it?
That's a good question. Number one, I appreciate you, brother. And your time. Gotta shout out Brooklyn College, man.
Yes.
We started from there, and we've stayed in touch. And going back to mindfulness, so mindfulness to me is every moment of your life, right? It's who you are when no one's watching. It's authenticity. It's being yourself in every environment. But what I would classify it as is not letting your thoughts run the show. It's you being present throughout everything and then being able to adapt based on the situations that you find yourself in. The hard part is not losing yourself in those situations.
So an interesting piece before we started, and we could always cut this piece out if you don't want it to be known, but you said you actually didn't look at the questions too much. And does that tie into mindfulness at all? Was there a strategy behind that tied into that? I'm just curious because it stood out to me.
It's a great question. So when I first started, right, I had all these expectations about what I need to do and who I need to be and how I need to act. Some of them were mine, and then some of them were placed outside. Like I've had people tell me like, you're too hood to be a mindfulness coach, or you look to whatever it is to be this. And I started to think about that sometimes. And then I'm like, am I really being myself, or am I giving these people the version that they want? So when I started thinking about that, it goes back to how I answer questions. If I look at questions and then assume that you want that answer, I'm giving you BS. I'm making you feel good. I'm making your audience feel seen. That's not my intention anymore. My intention is to be myself and use mindfulness. So when I looked at the questions, I had a good idea of what you were asking. But then I'm like, why pre-package something if tomorrow my perspective on it can grow, right? Or can change, or can shift. And also going back to the line of like, I'm very self-aware. If I'm in a bad mood and I look at those questions, that may affect the way I look at those questions. If I'm stressed out and I'm looking at those questions, it may change. I'm big on consciousness. So I try to be present in everything that I do. So that's one of the shortcuts to not looking at those questions. I also want it to be raw, to be real. So that's why I tend not to hyper focus on the content. I try to be the content.
I love it.
I mean?
Yeah. You know, a lot of my mindset recently was about like high performers because I just did an episode with the guy Chinzo Machida, and I noticed all high performers, you know, when they get into that ring, they kind of lose their mind a bit. They're not focused too rigidly on one thing. You know, they're able to be in that moment. They're able to see the environment for what it is. I always say it's kind of like a playful approach. It's like I have to work hard in training, but then when I get in the ring, I have to have this playful approach, because if I have this playful mindset, if you just think about vision, right? When you're focused, you have tunnel vision, it's super narrow. But when you're playful, the vision gets wider. You can see more, right? Like when you get into that ring, you need to be able to see it all. I need to know myself, I need to know you, I need to know the environment so I can respond best. And I think people that come into high stakes arenas with a playful mindset perform really well. And that like stood out to me with the questions. It's almost like treating it almost a bit playful too. Like if I took it too serious, you already did all the hard work, you know, like I'm sure writing your book and doing all these, like you already know your stuff well. What's the point of over studying the day before, right? Now just come into it playful and just kind of let it flow.
I'll expand on that, right?
Yeah.
I hope this doesn't offend the audience, but this is kind of the way I see it too. If I'm a good Catholic, right?
Right.
I'm a good Catholic every day.
Yeah.
Not on Sundays.
Yes. Well said.
If I'm a real mindfulness coach.
You're well said.
Right. I've read a lot of books that say, mindfulness doesn't happen only on the mat.
Right.
Only when you're alone, meditating, or when you're in a good mood. Right. Mindfulness is every day. It's every interaction. So when I come in, I try to be that, and it's not dependent on where I am. Right. I can change myself and flow, but I try not to, and then I try to live in the moment. And it's funny, if I may, I've been reading a lot about like Hinduism, and there's something in Hinduism called the Lila, the Lila. It's the divine play, and it's the premise that all of us, at the highest levels, our divinity and our consciousness helps us choose our lives. So why I bring that up is if I'm in a state of carefreeness,
right,
I'm chilling, look how the conversation flows.
Right.
So if I'm like, oh my God, I better answer all his pieces.
Right.
That's where the tension and the rigidity fucks up the flow of what I'm trying to do.
Yep.
When I'm happiest is when I perform the best.
Yep.
And when I'm calm and breathing. So all those elements rub into my Zen practices, my mindfulness, my opportunities, no expectations. The conversation flows better. And I'll tell you one more piece. When I read about like Don Miguel Ruiz, and he writes about like the four agreements. He's a beast. One of the things he talks about is the artist. The highest level of yourself is when you can be an artist. Not in the victim mentality and not in the warrior. You're the artist. You just flow, and your art is what you create every day.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So you just kind of touched on a little. One of the questions was, what's the value of mindfulness and being in the present moment? We kind of touched on it, but I don't know if anything else maybe comes to mind that you might want to share. What's the value of practicing mindfulness? Why would somebody want to practice these things? Why would they want to do it on a day-to-day? What benefit does it bring to them?
Love the question. There's like 1,000, honestly, right? But if I had to focus on a few, just tranquility, just health, just we do research all the time, right? Performance and movement podcast. We're here thinking about these things, movement and performance. And one of the things that come up is research. So there's big research on like what meditation can do for you, how it can help improve your central nervous system. I don't know if many people know that when you suffer from a stroke, one of the first things they suggest, the American Heart Association, is Tai Chi. Tai Chi helps, right? It's not super intense movement, but it's intense. It's movement coupled with breathing, and it helps you recover faster. So besides the physical fitness, right? My father's getting older. He suffered from anxiety. He has drinking issues. So when I go home, those environments are not always the most productive environments for me to be successful, right? And we talk about Brooklyn.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, I'm blind from my left side. So there's so many things that I've struggled with personally that I had to overcome. So mindfulness was kind of like the tool for me to become a better person. So at that level, there's the physical benefits, there's the mental health benefits, and then without going on a lengthy answer, there's also, we stop ourselves from being successful, right? Sometimes we have like imposter syndrome. So when big opportunities come up, and if I don't feel like I'm gonna be successful, I won't do it. You've seen, I've interviewed, I don't want to say famous people, but
big people for sure.
Like the Knicks guy. The guy was literally the Knicks mindfulness coach last year. And
Absolutely.
In the Philippines, starting businesses. So if I thought that he was better than me, I wouldn't be able to interview him. So instead, I clear expectations. We see each other as two brothers having a conversation. So
I
that's
love it.
everything about mindfulness. And then, if I may, right, I take the train every day.
Yeah.
I take that D train in the morning. It comes from the Bronx to the highest parts of Brooklyn. So within that, there are struggles that come up, right? 6 in the morning, people bumping into you on the train. So I try my best not to let the outside world affect my thinking. Because if my thinking is clogged, I can't make decisions from a good place. So that's where mindfulness.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I think for a lot of the people that listen to my podcast, there's always the connection with movement, right? But I say anytime you want to reach, whether it's enlightenment or like just the best that you can be in a certain type of arena, whether even if it's health or even if it's performing in the Olympics or whatever it is, you have to consider mind, body, and spirit. I think every practice has to integrate all three. And in today's world, we always tend to isolate a bit, right? Fitness just focuses on the body nowadays, right? I mean, yeah, you can say there is some degree of spirit in there, right? But because you have to push through the workout. But generally speaking, we try to separate it. It's like fitness is just training for your body. Some religions, you might be able to say, like spiritually, some people would say things like, you're going to move on to the afterlife. So kind of don't worry about investing in the body because it's going to wither away. So this, a lot of spiritual stuff is just the spirit. Like we always put these things into buckets. But what you notice is that any practice, whatever it is you want to do in the world, if you want to become more spiritual or if you want to get healthier with your body, if you incorporate mind, body, and spirit, it's going to be better. It's going to be richer. And most people just think of movement and they think of performance and they just think of the body. But I'm like, no, you have to think of the mind too. You can't not, and when I think of the mind, I think more maybe learning. But when I think of the spirit, I think more mindfulness, being in the present moment, being able to feel good, being able to, thinking more social, emotional stuff. But if you're not incorporating what you're thinking about, what are you focusing on? Where is your mind? Where is your head at? Even when it comes to simple health and fitness, you have to incorporate all three. So when I think of mindfulness, another big thing, I've done the martial arts my whole life. And in karate, they start with the bow and they meditate, right? And then they do the training. So there's this emphasis on the mind and like what you're focusing on and all these things, and they value it, So I just think it's super important to consider mindfulness, where your head is at, all of these things, even if you're just thinking about fitness and health, because all of them are interconnected. But so diving into maybe some practices, I tried to separate it into buckets a little bit, but we don't necessarily have to. But I kind of started with the environment. Are there any mindfulness practices or meditation practices that someone can do in their environment, whether it's like, I don't know, like a walking meditation or like something like, in your book, it was like feeling the wind or something like that. Is there any way that people can use their environment to practice meditation or to practice mindfulness?
That's a great question, brother. Thank you for asking that. So right now, right, like while you're listening,
right,
I started to do this. And it sounds so simple, but it's because if I don't mind-body connection, my thoughts start to run too fast, and I can answer this part of what he's saying and listen to this. So I noticed myself getting too excited, and I want to jump in, and I automatically went to mindfulness mode. So that's one simple technique we can do, because like you said, the mind-body connection is very important. So when you notice yourself getting anxious or overly excited, whatever it is, automatically I start breathing slower. And I can do that anywhere. Another thing I did is I combined the physical touch to help me center myself. Another great one is you can ask yourself sensations. So right now I can feel 3 or 4 different sensations. For example, the sensation of cold. Right, it's a little cold in here. Not that it's good or bad, it's just cold. Right? There's the sensation of my feet touching this carpet. There's the sensation of my back sitting on this couch. Right? So those are 3 things that I can bring myself back into to become more present. When you're waiting online at Starbucks and you notice yourself getting frustrated, like, yo, I'm in a rush, right? That feeling of anxiety is a feeling.
Right.
And most people tell you to ignore it. I tell you to put yourself deeply into it so that you don't resist anxiety, It just becomes something that's natural. So, okay, fine, I'm anxious. Who's anxious? Me. Who's me? The thinker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I start to say, all right, consciousness, you're getting anxious. Bring yourself back to this moment. And those simple practices of where am I? What am I feeling? You can bring yourself back like that. Those are simple ones. Another fun one I like to do, and you guys can try this at home, is you try to stay fully focused on where you're at. Sitting is usually better. And I'll look around the room and I try to find 5 things that stand out. Why I do that, I suggest starting in a room that you've been in every day, like your living room or your bedroom. And you'll notice that you can find things that stand out. And why that happens is the mind likes to block out information that doesn't seem important. So then you force your mind to look for things that stand out. And as you do that, opportunities pop up. Because you don't overlook Anthony in his podcast. Every opportunity is important. You understand? And that's me being mindful in the real moment. Right? And then there's so many things that I do, but that's just some quick ones.
That made me think of one lesson that I got years ago. It was actually from a karate guy too. But he said, all right, what I want you to do is look around the room. And then he said, find all the things that are red, for example, right? Then he says, close your eyes. Now tell me all the red things, the pole, the this, the that. He goes, now keep your eyes closed. Tell me all the things that are blue. And you're like, well, you didn't have me look for blue. I don't know. What the heck's blue? Whatever. He goes, open your eyes. He goes, look how many blue things there are in this room. And he goes, what you look for, you're always going to find. That was the lesson. And I was like, wow, that stuck with me so well. What you look for, you're always going to find. And next to everything red, he put something blue. So like to just show you even more, like it's not like there was less blue in the room. You just weren't looking for it.
So if I may, I'll jump
in.
That's us every day though.
Yeah.
Right? We think conversations are not important. Somebody asking for money is not important. Somebody saying good morning to me is not important. Right? I'll do funny activities all the time. I'll go to Starbucks, and if I sense tension in the staff, I'll be like, good morning, how are you?
Yeah.
Like, what's your order? And I'll say, good morning, how are you? And they'll say, what's your order? And I say, I heard you.
Right.
But how are you?
Right.
And that disarms them sometimes. Sometimes it triggers them.
Right.
And I do my best to not go back and forth. But other times, I'm teaching them how to be different people.
Yeah.
Slow down for a second.
Yeah.
This morning alone, I ran into my father. He said 6 things to me before he said good morning. I put my hand on his chest. I said, slow down for a second, Pop. You're going to give yourself a heart attack. He suffers from anxiety, so I'm trying to ground him. With touch, with sound, I'm hearing you. But I also don't like to give people that immediate feedback that they're looking for, because I like to break the thought cycle. Sometimes we can break thought. Going into Zen practices, there's something called the Ananda and the Satori. Satori is the first moment of awakening, they call it, where there's no thought. It lasts like a second, but when you taste that, it's like, wait a second. You're telling me that I'm someone besides these thoughts that I'm always harping on?
Right.
The Ananda is when you stay in that space. That's for like the monks. Those are the people that...
Damn, how long can you stay in there?
I can stay in a space of no thought on a good day for like 30 seconds.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 30 minutes. I was like, what?
I wish, like 2-3 minutes. But
that's still wild. Yeah.
On a beach, I'm looking at the water coming in and out.
Right.
We can practice it. It's fun, bro.
Yeah. So what would you do to practice? So no thought. So that's actually, there's something funny here. When I was growing up, I remember there was a kid, Mike Turbert. If he ever hears this, he's gonna laugh. But he said, he's like, just don't think. One day, I was like, what do you mean, just don't think? You can't not think. And he goes, watch, I'm gonna do it right now. I just did it, and I was like, what the heck are you talking about? And he's like a little goofy of a kid, but I was like, you can't not think. But it's funny you say it. So it's literally a moment of just not thinking and just being there, I guess. Is that what you're saying? Or explain more, because I don't know what you mean.
It's hard, right? So there's Anthony.
Right.
It's you.
Right.
And there's your thoughts.
Right.
And then there's you listening to your thoughts. Right? So far.
Yes. Got it.
It's out
I'm there.
Right?
Yeah.
So then it's working with the listener. What I'm trying to get you to do. Listen to the listener. And once you do that, it gets a little easier to slow down thinking. Once you slow down thinking, you enter a space where you literally just hear. You're present. It's harder for me to do when there's high stress environments. But like right now, there's literally nothing on my mind other than this conversation that you and I.
Right.
Literally nothing else.
Yeah.
So that redirection, hey, come back to the moment, come back to the moment. Those gaps get larger and larger. And on a good day, you can sit on them for longer and longer. So I just redirect my thoughts. And it is possible. And in that space, you probably get it when you're performing or when you're teaching or when you're doing things that make you happy. You're not thinking about time.
Oh, no, yeah.
Right? You're in what we call the flow.
Yeah.
So I call the flow the same thing as that gap of thinking. In that gap of thinking, there's no expectations. So life starts to surprise you. And then I align that thinking with what I shared with you earlier about being the artist. Are you an artist throughout your day, or are you the victim? It's victim, warrior, artist. The victim complains, doesn't do much. The warrior resists. The artist allows things to be and then flips back.
And creates too.
Creates. But at the highest level, you're creating through love, not resistance. Right? Not through anger. You're creating through like acceptance. Like, I get that this is what life is. What can I make? How can I make it better? So that's a combination of like spirituality and mindfulness that I use.
Absolutely. So another question I had, which you touched on before, what's the importance, or why should people slow down? Right. So if I am Starbucks, I gotta go. I gotta go to work. I gotta go. What is the importance of no, just be here for a minute? How is your day? That thing, let's just be here. What is it? Let's feel this couch for a second. Let's actually look at the sky. Let's do nothing. Let's just sit and do nothing and just look around or whatever. What's the value of those things? Why should somebody do that? Should they always be in a rush, especially in New York City?
So that's a great question, right? Sometimes I study people on the train and I'll look at them, how fast they're moving. They're crashing into people. They're not aware that their bags are hitting people, that they almost made someone fall down the stairs, that there could be an angel walking right in front of them and they just don't see it. So that destination mentality is what I call that. There's a term for it, and I'm only happy when I get there. So what if your trip is 2 hours? You're unhappy for those 2 hours? You see what I'm saying? You're always with yourself. You're always going to be with yourself. So if you don't enjoy that person, anywhere you go is unhappy. I make the point to some of my students that you can be in your dream vacation, but if you're with someone you don't like, it's not fun anymore. You can be in a horrible physical location like a prison system, yet still be happy. Right? So these kind of things that I share with people, life doesn't happen at events. It's all the other stuff. It's the gray area. So learn to appreciate the gray area. So your question about like, when can I be mindful is a beautiful question. If you're on the train, I have to take the train every morning. I guess I can get a car, but I don't want to, right? So I take the train every morning. I meditate there. Those 50 minutes are my minutes to create my day, right? To erase negativity from my life and just to be present. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. It's funny. I had something. I was like, this is probably what you had before. I was like, I'm really excited to say something back. And I said, you know what? Let me practice this grounding thing for a minute. It worked, yeah. But then I forgot what I was going to say.
So that's the beauty of the practice.
But it's good.
It is good. And it helps. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And as a performer, right, we're teaching. We're actors.
Right.
That moment, that's our stage of the students. That's right. Those are the audience.
Right.
So I'm very mindful of that. And also another point is, if I'm in a bad mood as a teacher, I just put 30 other people in a negative state of mind without even knowing it, right? And those 30 other people are going to be somebody's parents eventually, somebody's CEO, somebody's boss, somebody's Starbucks worker.
Right.
So what I do is I try to help everybody by helping one.
But yeah, one of the things you were saying was kind of like that whole, it's about the journey thing. What I've learned is if I can't be happy here, I can't be happy there. And that's because of literally how you're wiring your brain, right? Like that piece before we said of like what you look for, you're always going to find. If I'm always looking for the negative thing or something I got to look for in the future, I'm wiring my brain to be programmed to be that way. So even when the reward comes, that's like really great. Oh, I won, this, that. I can't even enjoy it because I'm still programmed to look for the negative or look for the future. And it's like, well, what's the next goal? Or what's the thing over here? Yeah, but it's only good in this moment because whatever. And like recently I've really understood the value of, can I be, and well, another question is toxic positivity. So I don't always have to necessarily be happy, right, in this moment, but can I find happiness or just being content with being here. Life really is about the journey. Because, you know, you end up getting there. Those quick rewards, whatever it is you're going for, is not going to last long anyway. Okay, you graduated, you won the championship, you're super high because you whatever. All those things, it's going to be so short-lived. So if you can't, like, the bread and butter is in the journey. If you don't enjoy the journey, you're never going to be happy, because that win is going to be super short. So yeah, I've really learned that it's important to be able to be happy with the simple things, with just being right here and just being present in the moment and being able to enjoy it. So this way, when my rewards do come, I can actually enjoy those too, and I can be there with them, whatever it is.
And not comparing them to the next goal, right? So that's why you're saying we're insatiable. So
right.
Going back to the question about why don't we slow down, I celebrate every win, right? And I feel every loss, but I've started to not live for only the wins, because the losses have a lesson. So what I do is I sit through it, I try my best to analyze it, not overthink it, not take it too personal. This is business, this is what happens. You're not going to win every game. But who are you when you bounce back? So those are the lessons that I try to teach. And going back to like the no expectations, slowing down helps you catch your thinking. And when you catch your thinking, you can catch like your programmed thoughts. So my goal here is to shift my thoughts. I'm not always super positive, but I'm very authentic about it. And then, if I may, right, going into a new position in my job, I'm teaching people how I want to be treated. Right, I come in as a leader, not because I think I'm better than you, but because I know what I'm good at. So I stay self-aware. And I use that to help people teach me. One of my favorite lines recently, I got into I want to use it back and forth, but one of these teachers was asking me to basically prove myself. And I finally said, you know, I'm so proud of it. I said, you know, I'm not in the business of proving myself to you. I don't mean any disrespect, but the only person I have to prove myself to is the principal. And obviously she gave me the position, so I'm qualified.
Right.
But if you want to work with me, if you have other questions, ask me. If you think I'm incapable of doing this work, this conversation is not going to go anywhere. And I think she needed to hear that too, because it's like, why are we always proving ourselves? Who are we proving ourselves to? Why are we giving up our power to people? Because you're in a position of, right? Because you're a higher authority. Right. Right. It's you have to think about that.
Those are all fake anyway. Titles that there's another person who gave it to you. I don't want to say it's all fake, right? But they're all man-made, and you're a man. So if you're the creator, right? If you become an artist, you can then create your own title.
And I can also work with, because see, what I'm hinting at is there's no ego there.
Right.
So I understand that you are in a position of power, but I don't have to relinquish my power to you. I can still be powerful, you can be powerful, and our orgs can interact when they need to. But I don't have to bow down to you. I don't have to pretend. One of the things I told my new principal is, I'm going to show you gratitude in my hard work. I'm not going to buy you a bottle of wine and some flowers to thank you for the position. In exchange, I will work hard every day. And you'll see 100% effort and authenticity.
And you'll ask her, how is she doing in the morning, and make her answer.
How'd you know? I did do that.
Yeah.
I did. She's very
I knew it.
And I'm like, before we talk, can you just tell me how you're feeling?
Yeah.
I did ask her about her personal life.
That's cool.
That's so funny.
Well, I'm just reading based off of you, so I would assume that that's something that you would actually do, and there it is, you actually did it. And I bet you caught her off guard, because I bet you no one at work really does. It's like, oh wow, someone actually wanted to listen, and then listened, you know?
So it's funny you said that. There's people that have been working at that school for 10 years.
Yeah.
She gave me a laptop.
Yeah.
And everybody's like,
I thought you were going to say a lap dance. I was like,
No,
damn, wait, no.
I'm married.
I'm kidding.
No, I hope not. But no, she didn't give me a lap dance. She gave me a laptop. And it was funny because some of the staff was like, yo, how did she, because everybody scared her.
Right.
And they was like, how'd you get the laptop? And I was like, I asked.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, how'd you get it? And I was like, I asked. There's no expectations. But if she would have said no, I would have been, oh, I hate you. I would have been like, no problem. I'll get my own.
Right.
So I showed another staff member. I said, come with me. I'll show you how I do it.
Right.
I said, I need a laptop. And if you have extra, she would appreciate a laptop.
Right.
What happened? She got a laptop.
Yeah.
Now, if I may, I know I'm going off on tangents.
No, go.
But it's important information. Leadership and how you speak, your intentions behind words is what gets you positions. So when I speak to other leaders, I let them know I'm a leader too. It's not about you're better or worse. It's just we're both leaders. Let's just respect the grounds, right? I'm in your house. I respect the rules. That's me introducing myself as a leader, and leaders talk leaders. I read a book that someone that sees themselves as subordinate, when they're sending emails, they say a lot of I. A lot of I think, I feel. Leaders say a lot of we and you statements, which is interesting because they think organizationally versus, I don't want to use the word low level thinkers, but people that don't want to be leaders think of themselves as less
Interesting.
than,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I is the subject of their conversations versus leaders are more we. You can help us by doing. Right? It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff. So the piece before I mentioned toxic positivity.
Yes, sir.
What is that? How would you define it, or what does it mean? How could someone understand it?
I love that question, right? So me and my girl talk about this all the time because she's a clinical social worker, and she says a licensed clinical social. She's really good at what she does. Shout out to my girl. I love you, please. Yeah.
She's smiling right now.
She's homesick, but I hope she feels better. No, but toxic positivity is this thing where you set up an unrealistic expectation of who you think you need to be. So when I use a perfect example, my uncle passed away 2 years ago. My favorite uncle, love him so much, right? He's still with us, right? But
Yeah.
I didn't know how to be mindful in a funeral. So I was like, let me just be myself. And I called it being mindful in sadness, mindful sadness. And I was terrified to see how those two would work. And I just stayed present in the sadness. And it was still obviously sad, but I didn't blame myself. All those other things that come, I could have done this, I should have been a better nephew, I should have. A lot of those shouldas is when we're in program thinking. So I pulled myself back and said, no, stay here, be present, see what your uncles and your cousins need. Go help your father, see what he needs. Right, see what the family needs. There was a moment where we were carrying out the body. It's sad, but I want people to understand. And in some funerals, you carry the coffin and everyone's crying. And there was a moment of like, what I call the satori, right? That awakening moment where I'm like, wait, they need help carrying the coffin. So I went over and helped them.
Right.
And in my own way, I was saying to my cousins, I'm here with you. So I was mindful in sadness, right? That was the practice. Now going back to answer your question about positivity, a lot of us, fake it till you make it. I try not to do that. So toxic positivity is this idea of you having to be on 100 all the time. Everything is great.
Right.
It's not realistic.
Right. Yeah.
It's not realistic.
Yeah. I think also, because mindfulness is about being in every moment as it is.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes people, that sadness, for example, the sadness is actually almost the medicine you need in that moment. And what do I mean? But like the crying. Crying is literally the medicine. And if you resist it too much, crying actually does things to the, helps you to be more in that parasympathetic nervous system. It helps like do certain things. The exhale, even when you go, they call it, shout out to Dr. Andrew Huberman, but the double sniff, like and then a long exhale. If you facilitate that yourself, it'll actually really help to calm the body. So you do that though when you cry, like, you do that same thing. So you're almost like neglecting the medicine that your body needed to relax in that moment too,
The thing is, I appreciate you saying the breathing techniques, right? Because we've been taught that it's not okay to cry, so that thinking of toxic positivity or whatever it is in the moment is we can't be that way.
Right.
So I've gotten to this point, it's like, who are you to tell me how I can feel?
Right.
Right? Because I know men cry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Suicides go up. So these things are important for people to understand because society dictates how we should be.
Right.
And when I start hearing a lot of shoulds, I question whose philosophy am I following?
Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing the thinking because I never made that connection of there is a element of healing within the breathing.
Yeah.
Right there.
And in everything, I'm sure, in that sadness, even all the things that your body does, right? Maybe if you naturally curl up. When you curl up, your diaphragm's in a better position to breathe, versus being too upright and extended, or like your body's just naturally doing the things it probably needs in that moment to heal. And just being present and feeling what does my body want and allowing it to happen. And look, if you're a person who doesn't want to cry in a certain moment because you don't feel it, then maybe that's your mindful moment. Maybe like you don't have to cry also, but if you feel like you do want to cry, then cry. You know, even if you're a grown man, if you're whatever, like we all cry, we all have these feelings, but being able to identify or just be in that moment, feel what my body needs and allow it, not resisting it and pushing it away. And then I think another big piece is like delayed gratification in a sense. You literally can't always be happy. You can't always be, there has to always be, life is always come and go, a roller coaster, up and down, on and off, left and right, whatever. There's always the opposites there. Yeah, go for it.
It's funny you said that, right? Because in Buddhism, I don't try to attribute my thinking to one religion or one philosophy because I've learned a lot from different ones. So like I've already quoted Don Miguel.
Yeah.
They're the shamans, Central America, Mexico. Then we have the Hindus, right? Been writing books for years.
Yeah.
3,000, 2,000 books, right? Years ago on this kind of stuff. So I bring it up. The Buddhists talk about it like the middle path. Finding the middle ground. And then there's this word called equanimity, which means to stay present or to stay balanced regardless of what's happening, the extremes, positive and negative. You find yourself in the middle area, if you will. And if you stay in that middle area, it's a little easier to be successful because you don't take things as personal. You're not as an elevated, you're not on 100. You're not in threat mode all the time. You're not in survival mode. You're good. You ground yourself faster. That's where mindfulness comes in. I used to be a really angry person. I'm blind from my left. I've held down to that anger for a very long time. When I finally started to process it, I became a different person. I got better at what I was doing. And going back to finding the middle ground, this is a new philosophy I'm working on. Two things can be true at the same time.
I totally agree. Wow. Go for it.
And when you master that, you get into less arguments. That could be your truth. This could be my truth. They could be completely opposite. And I can still have a conversation with you. That's mindfulness, right? That's me not putting my way of being on Anthony. That's not fair to Anthony.
Yeah.
Anthony never subscribed and signed up to that. He's who he is. I am who I am. Let's find the middle ground. Let's build from there.
Yeah, then you could get into a whole bunch of conversations. What is reality anyway, And like,
See what I'm saying?
because your perspective is shaping part of that reality. If there was a dog in this room looking around, they're going to see different colors. I could say all day, no, but I don't know what colors dogs can't see. But let's say it's blue, and I'm like, I wonder if I got that right. But anyway, like, I'm looking at this, I'm telling the dog, this is blue, this is blue, this is blue. And the dog's like, no, it's not, it's gray. Like, like you're, and people, while animals can be different, I think people are kind of different in that realm too, based on how you grew up or what culturally or, family upbringings or the neighborhood or the college you went to, whatever, like all these things shape how you're viewing the world too. So, we could be looking at the same exact thing and seeing two different things. And that's very real. And I also believe in that whole on and off. Like, most people nowadays, it's like you have to pick one thing, right? I'm either left or I'm right. I'm either Republican or I'm Democrat. Like, I think the easiest way for me to think about it is a gas pedal and a brake. I use the analogy of a car. I think that if you just have the brake, you're not going to go anywhere. If you just have the gas pedal, you're going to get into a car accident. You need gas and brake. Both of them are just as valuable. Both of them are true, or whatever word you want to say. I don't have to pick one. I don't have to say, I'm just the brake guy, or I'm just the gas guy. No, you need a gas and a brake to be able to drive the car. You need to use the certain ones at the right moment. So like, there's also, the same thing can be true at the same time, but there's also value in everything based on different scenarios that you might be in. And you might want to use a gas or a brake in different scenarios, We talked about breathing before. Do you have any good breathing exercises to share?
Yes, sir. I'm actually using them right now.
Go ahead, tell me.
I use them all the time. So
tell me.
The one that I like to teach to my students, my staff, is simple, just like a 4 to 6 second inhalation. Then you do like a 1 to 2 second pause, and then you blow it out your mouth intentionally, right, slowly, for about 4 to 6 seconds. So I usually, if I may, I'll demonstrate it with my hand. It's like,
go for it.
Right, and I usually start my teaching with like 3 of those because it is so effective in just like calming the central nervous system, clearing out negativity, having no expectations, and that goes back to being a master at what you do. You can practice, but there comes a point where you can't practice. You have to do, right? And everybody gets stuck on the practice. Very few people practice the do. What do I do when there's a real situation? How can I be mindful in those moments? Another good one, since we're talking about breathing techniques, is recognizing what emotions feel like in the body. So I know what anger feels like for me. Right? My face gets tight, my hands get tight, blood rushes, right? This is a physiological response we're talking about now. A scientific thing that happens to the body biologically when we're angry, right? Tension.
Absolutely.
Right, and you can't produce from those states. You can't produce well. So when I recognize, let's say, anger or anxiety in my body, because those are the easiest ones for me to recognize, it's an automatic, take a break, automatic, do nothing, take a pause. That answer that I gave to you when that teacher was like, oh, what do you do here and why are you good enough to be here? My response was, I'm not here to prove myself to you. I was proud of that. That was a mindful answer in a high intensity situation. Right. That could have went left and right. Imagine someone asking you, why are you here? Why do you think you're good enough to give feedback?
Pressing me hard.
Basically, right? And I'm a Brooklyn kid. I could have been, listen, watch your fucking mouth.
Catch me outside.
I know Anthony, but instead I was like, and I felt it coming. Yeah. We've had negative interactions.
I've had that. Yeah.
So when I saw her coming, I said, relax. Yeah. Do your breathing techniques. And they're not obvious. Yeah. Right? I could be breathing this entire time and people don't know.
I love it.
It's so simple. Yeah, like honestly, it's one of the greatest things I could. If I could give you one gift, it's practice your own breathing and redirect your thinking back to this present moment as much as possible.
I've actually started doing a little quick breathing exercise right before I eat nowadays. Right before I sit, because I'm like, I rush too much sometimes. I'm constantly have to check myself or remind myself, okay, do nothing, chill out, put your phone down. And so especially lunchtime, I'm like, don't look at the phone, don't do anything, just look at the food, take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out. Think about how delicious this thing is going to be. Look at how good it looks. Be there in that moment. And it's almost like an eating meditation, I guess.
It's called mindful eating. There's a real strategy.
There you go.
You just create it. So I have like friends that are eclectic. I have a good group of network. Yeah. One of my friends, shout out to Naomi. She's a massage therapist. Okay. But she's a Reiki healer too.
Very nice.
So she teaches me so much. She says that sometimes they do this practice where they turn off all the lights and they eat in the dark.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
So that's a little more out there for me. I'm not ready for it. Right. But she does it. She's ready. So those kind of things are important.
Yeah. So give me your give me one. I want to say your 2 favorites or one more of your one of your favorite meditation practices to do. We went over a couple today, but I want to try to capture one more. And I'll share one in your book that I liked. But give me one.
Which has been big for me is the forgiveness. That's a tough one though. There's levels to this game. That's like, if we're introducing, let's say, the elementary school level mindfulness, that one's a little further up. That's like high school. You get into like, I would call it the bachelor studies of school because it's very hard to do. So one example, and I'm gonna close my eyes so I can kind of talk you through it. So you sit down, right? You saw I already shook off the nerves. You kind of sit down, you ground yourself for about 5 to 10 minutes through the breathing. Once the brain slows down, you try to visualize yourself in like a garden, pretty place. It could be here. And you invite someone in that has disrespected you. So for me, it was the guy that blinded me. I wanted to forgive him. So I invited whatever you want to call it, his spirit, his energy, his name, even his memory, into my meditation. And I forgave him. Spiritually, I haven't had that conversation personally, but I'm okay. And if I ever see him again,
that's beautiful.
Do I want to kill him sometimes? Of course.
Of course, that ain't gonna go.
I'm blind for the rest of. But imagine the trauma he's been through. To be able to do that to someone else, and he probably has children. If I take him out, I'm perpetuating violence forever. Where I want to stop it today. So forgiveness meditation is a great one. Another good one we could do is just sitting by the water for a few minutes and mimicking the flow of the water.
In what way? Your hands, your body?
Well, I just kind of sit, and as the water retracts, right, my breathing retracts. As the water expands, my breathing expands. I used to
like it.
I don't know if I'm right, but I say, if I ever talk to God, I'm gonna ask him if the water is his lungs.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's two simple ones. The forgiveness one's a little out there, but a lot of us have anger. So if you can do that one, you'll be a little bit easier. Anger slows us down.
Yeah, I actually really like the one that stood out to me recently. A lot of them stood out in your book, but take yourself on a date.
Ooh, talk to me.
No, just simple. It was like that because it forces you to reflect while you're there. It forces you to be with yourself and to just be quiet or whatever it is. You're kind of, there's no distraction. It's just you. Now I have to think about, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Then there's all these thoughts when you're there. Someone might be looking at me. Oh, why is he by himself? And I have to let all that go. And just be able to be there with myself on this date, and then have some self-compassion, care for myself. Think about, what do I want? What do I want to eat? What do I like? I don't know. It was such a simple, such a simple one, but I really like take yourself on a date. It really helped me to, implement a lot of those strategies of mindfulness and being in that moment and letting go of distractions and giving myself self-compassion, and it was a cool one.
I appreciate you reading that.
Yeah. Do you carry any reminder for presence? That was another thing I got in your book too. But do you have anything you carry with you?
So when I first started, I would have more physical objects.
Yeah.
Rocks, stones. I had this one.
You've graduated.
Right?
Yeah.
But they're not as spiritual as they used to be.
Okay.
I've given them less and less power. When I first started, they were like, oh, this means this and this means that. Now I just look at them like, oh, ground yourself. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But when I first started, I had the rocks. It would say like, oh, life is a beautiful journey, and it would be an affirmation.
Right.
But now I try to literally live it. When you first start, you want to remind yourself.
Right.
When you're in it every day, you just remind yourself to continue.
You've graduated. You're a black belt now.
I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to get there.
So as we start to close, I know our time's wrapping up. Are there any final words you want to give to anybody? Not that you have to, but just want to open the floor before we start to close out.
Well, most importantly, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
I learned a lot just sitting here and being around you and what you do.
Same.
Please keep up the good work.
Same.
Always appreciated your honesty and your hard work.
Yeah.
Your dedication to your craft and your martial arts.
I appreciate it.
I like that it comes from a lineage of creators.
Zen too. Yeah.
And there's a lot of tie-over, right? A lot of crossover in what we do. So I appreciate you recognizing that in me, and vice versa. For those of you listening, everything is possible. I suggest dedicating as much time to your craft as you do to your work. Finding your passions and delving into them fully. No expectations, less ego. Put in the work. It will pay off. Be a good person. And do your best not to rub your pain on the undeserving. Right? That's a big one, because I think people project often, and let's just start the process of healing so that the next generations can have an easier life. That's what it's about. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. And enjoy the process.
Enjoy the process.
Because, enjoy the moment right here, right now. Once you shut this off, look around that room. What's something beautiful you can enjoy?
My man. That's a good one. And follow MindfulWizard.
Yes, follow my. Oh, yo. So yeah, last piece. Your book.
Yes,
Tell me the name of it.
Oh, I got you. It's a 5-minute Zen journal.
Yes.
It's an interesting story. We can talk about how that came into fruition.
And how can people follow you and stay connected?
100%. Just check out MindfulWizard on Instagram and TikTok. I post a lot. Try to put a couple memes a day, a couple videos a day. Stay in touch. I'm reachable.
I love your page. Every day there's always something fun. It's borderline funny, and especially if you're from Brooklyn, it has a little bit of that which you need. It has your uniqueness, a touch on there, but then it's presence and mindfulness too. So stay connected for motivation. Thank you for today.
Sure, thank you, bro. I'm very blessed.
We'll have to get a part 2.
Let's do it.
All right, brother.
God bless you.